I believe it goes here. I don't know which.
That's pretty simple. Yeah, they all do it.
I don't know which one, but.
I'll just say Michael one, since that's the first one and only one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So poll number 1.
Oh, actually, this has a number 3 on it. It's typically 3.
What says 3? That? Well, then I would follow 3. Oh! Woohoo! Okay. I'm going to bring it back to the office after the service. So you Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, where we covenant to weave together the fabric of community from the strands of our separate lives. We are a spiritually alive, socially justice-oriented, and radically inclusive congregation. Whoever you are, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. We adhere to the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, which you can find in the inside cover of the gray hymnal. And if you are a newcomer or visitor, you'll see a newcomer card in the pocket of the chair directly in front of you. Feel free to take that with you. This is a great time to silence any noise-making devices as we prepare for this morning's service. I have a couple of announcements to share. For those who are unaware, there's an RE program that takes place during the summer months starting at 10 a.m., which is the same start time as this service. So in case you are not familiar with our congregation, please, and wish to visit again and didn't know about this in advance, please be aware that there's a religious education program running for our youth during the summer. Secondly, there's an awakening class that has been advertised to begin in September. However, the start date has been moved to October. So rather than have a registration deadline of August 14th, which would be next Sunday, the registration deadline, I believe, is September 11th. And if you hadn't heard about this previously, awakening, frequently referred to as enlightenment, is a potential for all of us, for us all, and exists as a possibility within Unitarian Universalism. We will explore how personal awakening can help us to transform our suffering world, explore whether we can awaken in this lifetime, what could hinder us, what roadmaps will best serve us, and how to prepare. We utilize wry humor, derive valuable insights from meditation, investigate teachings of enlightened beings, and share in our personal experiences. Each session will include mindfulness meditation. Some experience will be helpful but not crucial. Weekly readings and videos will be part of the curriculum, and hopefully the sessions will be in person. And for further information, I see Alan Wells here. Would you raise your hand? More information, Alan Wells or Hazel Bell. And our service shall begin. Okay, and in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we will light a chalice. If you are home, please light a chalice or a candle, and together let us recite the words by James Villa Blake. You're going to have to use the lighter because that charger candle didn't work. I apologize. Okay, and together, love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We will now have a responsive reading. I'd like to invite Janet Horst to be part of this. Okay. So Janet will read, if you're on that side, Janet will read the first line and all the lines that are in the standard font. And this side of the room, please read along with Janet. And this side of the room, read along with me in italics, please.
Everyone ready? From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness.
By many cares and preoccupations, by diverse and selfish aims, we are separated from one another and divided within ourselves.
Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all.
We cherish our oneness with those around us and the countless generations that have gone before us.
We would hold fast to all of the good we inherit, even as we would leave behind us the outworn and the false.
We would escape from bondage to the ideas of our own day and from the delusions of our own fancy.
Let us labor and hope for the dawning of a new day without hatred, violence, and injustice.
Let us nurture the growth in our own lives of the love that has shone in the lives of the greatest of men and women, the rays of whose lamps still illuminate our way. And all together, please. In this spirit we gather, in this spirit we pray. And now please rise in body or spirit for song number 298. Thank you. Wake now my senses.
Feel the deep power of being.
Thank you for your patience. Now is the time in our service where we give and receive our weekly offering. We believe that generosity changes lives. It changes the lives of people in our community, and it changes our own lives in the giving. Every week, 50% of our offering goes to support our good work here at the fellowship, and 50% goes to support the good work of nonprofit organizations in our community. And today's offering, it will be shared 50% with Norwestcap, and you can donate at the text to give number listed in your order of service, and you can also go to www.muuf.org. So as we enter these moments of quiet contemplation with beautiful music, please be as generous as you can. Every bit makes a difference. Thank you. This is the time in our service when we share deeply important and personal milestones that have happened during the week. Know that we are your community, and if you have a serious need or have suffered a personal tragedy, we want to help. And if you have a new member in your family or other personal joy, we are eager for the chance to celebrate with you. We have some good news. Arlene Shapiro has been at the Livia Rehab Center in East Hanover for almost 1 month following a fall at home in which she fractured neck bones. That's not the good news. The good news is that she may be discharged home this week with a 24/7 assistance, and Arlene will need to wear a neck collar for a number of weeks and unfortunately continues with neck pain. Arlene would appreciate short visits for 15 to 20 minutes at her home in Morristown. And who would be a good contact? Lorelei, are you a contact for confirming her arrival home? Or okay, Doug Ford would be a good person to check with to confirm that Arlene is at home and ready for visits. And let's hold all who are on the mend. It takes great courage and sustenance to do that. During the week, actually earlier this week on August 2nd, marks 20 years since my little sister passed away. She succumbed to Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she was a tremendous inspiration. She was the original baby whisperer. She had a magic way with kids, and after her passing and I returned to my work, I focused on the little kids in her memory. And finally, Sharon Glickman, wife of Ann Gaynor, died peacefully on Tuesday, August 2nd. In her last days, she was surrounded by love and family and close friends. Cards would be appreciated rather than calls. And in the tradition of our congregation, we light a candle in honor of that brilliant life. And while someone wise said that death may end a life, but it does not end a relationship. So let's hold alive Sharon's spirit at this time. Let us enter a moment of silence, and during this time, let us offer compassion for others as well as ourselves, and let us be instruments for peace and hope in the world. O Spirit of life, known by many names, yet by no name fully known, we gather today with hopes and dreams and also with fear and wounds. May we be reminded that all things come and go, and that today's joys and today's sorrows will in time give way to those of tomorrow. And those of us who have the strength to share today, let's do so while we can. And those of us who are in need, let's allow ourselves to receive, for tomorrow those roles might well be reversed.
Our reading today, before we get into our chat, is by Rainier Rilke in his book of the Hours. He's a German poet from the early 19th or 20th century, rather. And so he speaks here of God. I want to remind everyone, and we're going to talk about it a little bit in the sermon here. When we refer to God, it's not necessarily the God, a Christian God, or the God of Abraham, or whatever. It's however we define it in ourselves. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But when you use that word, please don't be triggered by it. It's however we talk about the higher power. God speaks to each of us as God makes us, then walks with us silently out into the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You sent out beyond your recall. Go to the limits of your belonging. Embody me. Flare up like flame and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nobody in the country they call life. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know by its seriousness. Give me your hand. Let's now sing our song.
Stop that fast and
Excellent. You may be seated. Now, if you guys have been following along to all the announcements, you will realize that this sermon title and theme have changed, and I will let you know it's changed a little bit as well as I continue to think about it. So I apologize for those coming here to talk about, again, generational theory, about Gen Z. We can talk about that later. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing here. This is a question I keep asking myself. As many of you know, I'm new here to the fellowship, but also new to Unitarian Universalism. I grew up in a Christian church, worked there for many, many years, and I found myself called to this place, though I'm not sure I've known why all the time. And so I'm constantly asking why. I ask myself, why am I here? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is there so much stuff in the library? Why? I keep asking. For those of you who are at the clean-out day, we've got it. We're working on it. Right? Just why? What are we doing here? And when I started, I was particularly perplexed. I started my first couple of weeks here, or months here. And before I got here, I had been working a lot with a lot of young adults, a lot of millennials. We're not young adults now. Gen Xers and Gen Z as well, who had left the church. People who claimed to be spiritual but not religious. And those were kind of the folks I was ministering to, so to speak, for a long time. And I got here to the fellowship, and I started delving into Unitarian Universalism, and I heard a lot from the beginning from those who were skeptical of my Christian roots. Now, skepticism is, I feel, a core tenet of Unitarian Universalism, and I love that about it. But I went to that picnic. You guys remember going? We had this picnic at Lewis Morris Park last spring, right? And I met a lot of you. I hadn't even officially started there, but there were a couple people who came up to me and said, I heard you came from the Christian church. I'm not a fan of that. It's very muff of you. But to those people's credit, they were like, oh, now that we've met you and your family and talked to you, I'm very excited for what you're doing. And they've continued to help now. But there's that skepticism. And there was conversations in the beginning about the words we use at the fellowship. There was a conversation about using the word worship around things that I had written. Now, I'll remind you that I was very cautious about the words I used, and worship was something that you all have been using for a long time, and I just hopped in there, but I think my presence rang some bells to people. And so I tell you all this because I began to see Unitarian Universalism, and particularly the fellowship here, as a place that was religious but not spiritual. Almost the opposite of those people I had worked at. Now, I'll confess to you I was wrong, and I'll tell you why. As I began to talk to you all, to these people who had these legitimate skeptical criticisms, I think they're great and wonderful, I realized that what I was thinking as spiritual, what I think I was seeing in those conversations as spiritual, was clearly this belief in something bigger, but also kind of something you couldn't touch, or tangibility, right? And I think that's true, it's still true there. But I think for those who are asking me, well, do you believe in Jesus or God? Well, I don't believe in that. I'm a humanist, and I believe in science, and we need all this stuff. And what I was seeing initially as not spirituality is actually spirituality. Allison used to say every Sunday, and Marjorie said it before, that we are a spiritually alive, socially focused congregation. And I realized that what people were seeing in those things was their spirituality, because ultimately spirituality is what connects us to the greater world, the greater fellowship, the greater civilization, and to our country. And so I began to see that, no, this place is truly spiritually alive in many more and different ways than I was even able to see. So the question came back to, what are we doing? Why do we do this? What are we doing here? And I realized that goes back to some of those similar things that I had learned. That once I got over the weird ways in which we talked about spirituality, and that what wasn't what I was used to, there are some things that I was used to. Coming together is the point of what we're doing here. We could all have our own meditation practice at home. We could all study and read the books that we read here at home, but we can all sing these songs at home There's plenty of recordings on YouTube, you can listen to them. But coming here together or being online at this moment is important. That's what we're doing here together as a team. Now, I am a big football guy. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. I understand, I will say, that football has all of its problems. I've had my share of concussions. I know that CTE is a problem. I know the NFL is a hot mess. What they're doing with Deshaun Watson is absolutely unjust. That dude should be banned from the whole league. But I love football. Something I played, my father played, my grandfather played. One of the things I love about it is it's an immensely important team sport. I like baseball as well. I like basketball. Those team sports do not rely as heavily on each other, and I've played all those sports, as football does. I believe that we are here as a team together, doing this stuff together. And so, I'm going to talk about why. The other part of that, we are spiritually alive, is that we are a socially conscious community. We can't do what we want to do when it comes to social issues, whether they're environmental issues or racial issues or LGBTQ issues, or trying to understand how best to uphold the worth and dignity of people by using their proper pronouns that they choose alone. We need to do it together. Doing all of that stuff together is important. One of my favorite writers is this gentleman. He's actually a Catholic priest. I apologize for that. But his name is Father Richard Rohr, and I like to say, he says that he is only a Christian and a Catholic priest because that's the language he was given, but that he believes in so much more, and I feel like that's where I am right with him. But he talks about how we often use our calculative mind to combat the world's problems, to solve the world's problems. He's founded this place called the Center for Action and Contemplation, action first and contemplation. And that one of the problems we do is that we see those who oppress, those who further injustice, they use their calculative minds. They find out ways in which they can survive themselves, they other people, right? It all comes from this base piece in your brain, this id, right? A lot of injustice comes from fear and intolerance and misunderstanding. And then it's codified into systems and policies, and those are what we need to break down. But what Richard Rohr says is that oftentimes we, on the progressive side, try to combat those things from the same place. And that's why we lose. Because when we fight for justice in those same ways, out of fear or emotion or rationality, we lose. Because that side actually does a pretty good job of it beforehand. We're fighting fire with fire, and that doesn't work in this space. He reminds us that we need to first, before we go out and have those fights, enlighten ourselves, raise our own consciousness. We need to go and see people with a Trump flag on their front lawn. I don't know why they have so many flags, but they do, but not as another or as an idiot or someone who's ignorant or hateful or any of those things, but as another person trying to make their way in the world. And we can't do that unless we see all people as humans with worth and dignity, as is in our 7 principles. I believe one of the best ways to do this is together and by seeing who we are first. We do this through things like contemplation. I highly suggest everyone take Reverend Wells' class on awakening this fall. We're offering classes on, this is going to be a little commercial for adult programs, we're offering classes on the Enneagram, a personality typing system. All this stuff is going to come out in a couple weeks. A personality typing system to see who we are so that we, and our motivations, and so that way we can address how we react to the world, who we are. We're going to offer a class on grief. We're offering a parenting class on how to raise anti-racist children. We continue to have a meditation group that meets every Thursday. I've been meeting with them this summer. It's been really lovely to meet on Zoom and sit quietly, talk about some Buddhist teachings, and continue to expand our brains and how we react. We have yoga, we have a book club, we have cinema circles, we have ways in which we come together as a team. We need to continue to do those things, be involved in that. We come here on Sunday mornings as a group. Now, I told you I'd get back to my football thing. Not only do I love football, I love one specific football team. I love the Buffalo Bills. Now, my wife tells me that if there was ever a game in which during Nick's sermons, the Buffalo Bills would be the free space on it, a bingo game perhaps. The Buffalo Bills are my favorite team, and I don't know why. I'm from Buffalo originally. My family's from them. My father, my grandfather, our whole family loves them. We have more apparel. We go to a game every year. We love them. The Buffalo Bills, if you know anything about football, have been terrible. In the 90s, when I was a young kid, we went to the Super Bowl 4 times. We lost all 4 times. We then went for a couple more seasons. Starting in the year 2000, we missed the playoffs for 19 years, holding the record for the longest playoff drought of any professional team. But I love them. Now, I bring them up particularly here because if you know anything about football and the Bills, this year is our year. And this isn't just hyperbole this time. This is because we have put together a really good team, led by a really great quarterback. And so they started their spring training up in Rochester, New York, where my family lives now. And I was up there last week dropping off my daughters at a summer camp led by one of my friends up there. And training camp was happening in Rochester. And so I was reading all about it. My Google News alerts knew that I love the Bills and I was going to Rochester, so they gave me all of that information. And I was reading every article about them. And there was this article about why our quarterback is as good as he is. He's got great talent. He's got a good head for the game, drive, arm strength, speed, physical prowess. He's taller and bigger than most quarterbacks. But what the article talked about is that he does something different that not a lot of quarterbacks do. A lot of elite ones do, I guess. But he goes to a personal quarterback coach in the offseason. Not only does he have this great coaching staff at the Bills, head coach, coordinators, all that stuff, he then seeks further to make himself better. That's why I think we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. It's what, and I'll tell you this is just an aside. If we go to the Super Bowl, I won't be here. I'm going to be up with my family. But that's neither here nor there. He works hard even in the offseason. Why do I tell you all this? Besides to brag about my team and to make ridiculous predictions? Because it's that individual coaching method that I was struck by. We do a lot of things together. We come on Sunday mornings. We go to our small groups. We do all that stuff. But I want to also encourage you to be like Josh Allen and find some individual coaching. What does that mean? First, find a therapist. Every one of you needs to go to therapy. I don't know your stories particularly. It's not a knock on anyone. Everyone needs to go to therapy. Everyone needs to find a therapist and do that. It's important. Not because you're broken, but because they'll do great things and help you out. Become who you can be, a better version of who you can be. The second person I'd like you all to find is a spiritual director, an individual who can work with you on a spiritual level, who's going to help you explain and explore and discover the ways in which we are connected to each other and how you fit in that. That's the big question that we're trying to work here, and we do it here on Sunday mornings, but someone individually. I'll let you know that I started working with a spiritual director several years ago, moved myself into training to become one through that process, and that's why I'm not at my Christian church anymore and why I'm here now, because I found my place in the universe that wasn't what other people were telling me it was. So it's a big plug for that. Now I'll get to my last little bit here. One of the ways the most base way that we can expand ourselves, and Reverend Wills and those who have been studying with him will tell you, is to be quiet, to sit still, not be quiet like in a conversation, although I think some of us, myself very much included, could probably stand to use that, but sitting quietly in meditation, or what some refer to as a contemplative sit, or centering prayer. There's all sorts of terms for it, but spending explicit time sitting in silence. Now, for some of you, that sounds terrible. For myself, that sounded terrible as well. As a certified ADHD haver, that sounded like the worst. To sit still with my own thoughts, but it's not with your own thoughts. You let go of your own thoughts. It's hard. It takes practice. That's why they call it a spiritual practice. You do it often. So I've been sitting silently for 20 minutes for almost three and a half years now. And I tell you, it gets easier sometimes. It wasn't this week. I had a lot to do. I had to get ready for the fall. I'm going on vacation next week. I had to do this. It's not easy to sit still with my thoughts, but sometimes it's good. But when you come to that understanding of who you are through that meditation, through that centering prayer, you can become a more fuller version of yourself. Then we can start doing all of the social justice actions that we so much like to talk about. We can do our environmental justice pieces, our LGBTQ justice pieces. We can march for Black lives. We can do all that stuff, but only once we take care of ourselves. So we're going to sing a song, and then we're going to actually sit all together quietly for a few minutes. So we're going to do it together, okay? So let's sing our song, and then I'll talk about that.
Number 123, Spirit of Life.
All right, so everyone have a seat. We're going to do a little silence together. Here's how I was taught it. There's a little bit different ways to do meditation or this kind of stuff, but I'm going to share with you mine. And again, you'll see Reverend Wells in his awakening class. It's going to be great. Or join us for meditation on Thursdays. You can learn it that way as well. I start with what is called a sacred word or phrase. You don't repeat that necessarily, right? There's a form of meditation where, right, you've seen kind of in the movies where everyone sits cross legs and they go, We're not going to do that. You're going to sit quietly. You're going to focus on your breath. And when a thought comes to your brain, whether it's what you have to do today or how this cord is rattling on the AC, I'm sorry I'm pointing out, but you're all going to know it. I notice it. You're going to replay. You're going to say your sacred word or phrase, something simple. It could be something like beauty. Mine is be still. So I have to remind myself to do that a lot. And just let the thought go. At the end of it, I'm going to time it for everyone. I'm going to play the chime to start, time to end. At the end, we're going to let go, take a deep breath. I'm going to say amen, and we're going to go. Centering prayer, meditation is simple, but so important. I'm going to sit quietly for 10 minutes. I usually do it for 20 when we're doing it normally, but I understand our limitations. And we're just going to go into the world more fulfilled, more ourselves, hopefully being better people. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so everyone grab a nice seat, feet on the floor, don't cross your legs. Don't want you to hurt your whatever. And we will sit together. Doing this together also is super important. It's a different vibe than when I do it myself, so I love it. So I'm going to time us. hope that you found that enriching. We're going to go from this place. Remember, we do things together. Get therapy. Find the spiritual director. And sit quietly. Amen. Thank you for joining me this morning. Thank you.